Hey there, tonight we're going back, way back, to a time when your name wasn't attached to any nation, when the land you walked wasn't called France, and when survival meant more than paying bills. You are standing in the year Sambyte AD, somewhere along the Rhine River. The Roman Empire stretches before you like a dying giant, and you are a Frank, not French. Frank, a warrior from a loose collection of Germanic tribes that history barely remembers to record properly. You don't know it yet, but your descendants will name an entire country. Tonight, you'll live through the brutal, bizarre, and surprisingly mundane reality of building a kingdom from absolutely nothing. Welcome back to our channel, where we explore the history they never taught you in school. Before we begin this journey through warfare, survival, and the strange transformation of a people, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. So, dim the lights, settle into your blankets, and let's walk through the cold, muddy, blood-soaked path that led to France. Your ancestors were tougher than you think. Let's find out why. You wake before dawn in a longhouse that smells of smoke, unwashed bodies, and damp straw. The Rhine River flows somewhere beyond these wooden walls, a boundary between your Frankish territory and the crumbling Roman Empire. Your name is Chilodio, though history will barely remember it. You are 23 winters old, which makes you practically elderly among warriors. Most men your age are already dead from battle wounds, infection, or the simple act of living in the 4th century. Your breakfast is a chunk of yesterday's dark bread, hard as a river stone, softened slightly in watered-down beer. The beer tastes like fermented grass because that's essentially what it is. You chew slowly, methodically, because food is precious, and your teeth are already showing signs of decay. There's no toothbrush in your future, no dentist, just eventual, inevitable pain. Around you, the longhouse stirs. 15 families share this space, separated only by hanging furs that do nothing to muffle sound or smell. Someone's infant cries. An old woman coughs violently, the wet sound suggesting she won't survive another winter. Your wife, Brunhild, is already awake, tending the central fire pit that never fully dies. She's pregnant with your 3rd child. The first 2 didn't make it past their 2nd year. Nobody talks about it. Outside, you hear the sounds that define Frankish life: livestock shuffling, men arguing about territorial boundaries, the rhythmic clang of someone repairing weapons. The Romans call you barbarians. You call yourselves free. The difference, you've learned, often comes down to who wins the next battle. The morning council meets in the largest hall, where your chieftain, Theudemir, sits on a carved wooden chair that aspires to be a throne, but mostly just looks uncomfortable. He's 50, which makes him ancient. Most men don't live past 40. His authority comes from surviving this long, and from killing more enemies than anyone can accurately count. You stand with 40 other warriors, listening to the same arguments you hear every week. The Romans are weak. Everyone knows this. Their legions no longer patrol the Rhine border with the same vigilance they once showed. Their soldiers are increasingly recruited from Germanic tribes, just like yours, which means Rome is essentially paying barbarians to keep out other barbarians. It's the kind of absurd political situation that would be funny if people weren't dying over it constantly. Theudemir wants to raid a Roman settlement across the river. Not for glory, not for territory, for food and iron. Your tribe is slowly starving. Last harvest was poor. The winter was brutal. 6 children died in your village alone. Raiding isn't adventure. It's agricultural policy implemented through violence. You'll cross the river, hit a storage depot, and return before Roman reinforcements can organize. Simple, except it's never simple. A younger warrior, Zuno, argues for a different target, a smaller Frankish tribe to the north that controls better farmland. Theudemir dismisses this immediately. Franks don't fight Franks. Not yet, anyway. That particular innovation in self-destruction will come later. For now, you maintain the fiction of tribal unity against Rome, even though you can barely stand most of the other Frankish clans you occasionally encounter. The council argues for an hour before deciding exactly what everyone knew. They'd decide from the beginning, raid the Romans. You spend the afternoon preparing for tomorrow's raid, which mostly means checking that your equipment won't immediately fail and kill you. Your spear shaft is solid oak, which you inspect for cracks. Finding none, you test the binding that holds the iron spearhead in place. The leather strips are fraying. You'll need to replace them. This requires killing a rabbit, skinning it, cutting the hide into strips, and binding them wet so they shrink tight as they dry. It takes 4 hours. Nobody said preparing for battle was glamorous. Your axe needs sharpening. You sit on a log outside your longhouse, running a whetstone along the blade's edge with practiced, meditative strokes. Your father taught you this. Your father died in a raid when you were 12. You remember him teaching you how to tell when a blade is sharp enough. It should catch slightly on your thumbnail, without cutting. Modern people will have all sorts of sophisticated ways to measure sharpness. You have your thumb. It works. Brunhild brings you more beer and sits beside you, working on sewing a tear in your cloak. You don't discuss tomorrow. What's there to say? You'll go, you'll fight. You'll either come back or you won't. She'll either be a widow or she won't. This is simply how life works. The Romans write about Frankish fearlessness in battle. The truth is less poetic. You're just accustomed to death being a constant neighbor. By evening, your weapons are ready. You eat a larger meal than usual. Dried meat, boiled grain, an apple that's mostly mealy but still edible. Your stomach gurgles uncomfortably with the unusual quantity of food. You sleep poorly, waking several times to check that your gear is still where you left it, as if it might wander off on its own. Dawn arrives too quickly. You wake, dress in your best clothes, which means your least patched tunic, and gather with 30 other warriors at the river's edge. The Rhine moves slowly here, wide and cold, and indifferent to human conflict. You'll cross at a shallow point known only to locals, wade through chest-deep water while holding weapons overhead, and emerge on Roman. If anyone sees you crossing, the plan fails immediately. If the water is deeper than expected, people will drown. Warfare is mostly logistics and bad luck. Theudemir leads the group personally, which is unusual. Most chiefs stay home and let younger men do the dying. His presence means this raid matters more than the usual grab-and-run operations. You suspect he's received intelligence about valuable supplies, probably traded information from other Franks who serve as Roman auxiliaries. The Romans' habit of hiring barbarians to fight barbarians creates wonderfully exploitable information networks. The crossing is miserable. The water is so cold it immediately numbs your legs. You hold your spear overhead, moving slowly to avoid splashing. Halfway across, the young warrior Sunno stumbles on an underwater rock, loses his balance, and disappears beneath the surface. 3 men nearest him grab blindly, pulling him up sputtering and panicked. He's dropped his spear. It's gone, somewhere on the river bottom. He'll fight today with only a knife. His chances of survival just drop significantly. Nobody comments on this. Pointing out obvious danger is considered rude. You reach the far bank, emerge dripping and shivering, and immediately move into Roman forest. Your group spreads out, advancing through morning mist toward a supply depot that serves several nearby settlements. With luck, you'll be in and out before anyone knows you're there. Luke, however, is not something you've ever had in reliable supply. The Roman supply depot is less impressive than you'd hoped and more guarded than you'd feared. It's a wooden structure surrounded by a deteriorating palisade wall, with two bored guards standing at the entrance, trying to stay awake through their overnight watch. You can smell baking bread from inside. Actual wheat bread, not the dark, gritty stuff you normally eat. Your mouth waters involuntarily. This raid is suddenly very personal. Theudemir signals the attack with a simple hand gesture. No war cries, no dramatic speech. You charge forward with the others, covering 50 feet of open ground before the guards notice anything wrong. By the time they react, you're already at the wall. One guard tries to shout a warning, but Theudemir's spear catches him in the throat, cutting off the sound to a wet gurgle. The other guard runs. Smart choice. He'll warn reinforcements, but he'll survive. Survival beats honor every time, despite what the songs claim. Your group pours through the gate. Inside, you find exactly what you need: barrels of grain, cured meat hanging from rafters, iron tools, bolts of wool cloth. But you also find 4 more guards, now scrambling to arm themselves. This is when warfare stops being strategy and becomes animal panic. A Roman guard swings a sword at you. You block with your shield. You feel the impact shudder up your arm and thrust your spear at his midsection. He twists away, your spear point catching only fabric. He lunges again. You're dimly aware of fighting happening around you. Shouts, the clang of weapons, someone screaming. But your entire world has narrowed to this one man, trying to kill you, and your efforts to kill him first. You kill the Roman guard, though calling it a clean kill would be generous. Your spear catches him in the side, below the ribs, and he makes a sound you'll remember forever. Not a scream, exactly, more like all the air leaving his body at once. He falls. You stand over him, breathing hard, waiting to see if he'll get up. He doesn't. Around you, the fighting has ended. 5 Roman guards dead, 3 wounded badly enough that they won't survive the day even if left alone. 1 Frankish warrior, Gunther, has taken a sword cut across his thigh that's bleeding profusely. He'll lose the leg if infection sets in, which it probably will. 4th century medicine is mostly hope and prayer. Now comes the boring part of warfare. Carrying things. You stuff grain sacks, load up dried meat, grab tools that can be repurposed. Theudemir finds a small locked chest and smashes it open with his axe, revealing Roman silver coins, useless in daily Frankish life, but valuable. For trading with merchants who still pretend Rome's economy functions. You personally grab an iron hammer, 2 knives, and as much cured meat as you can carry. Someone finds wine. Everyone takes a long drink. It tastes like acidic grape juice left too long in a dirty barrel, which is exactly what it is. It's still better than what you normally drink. The entire raid has taken maybe 20 minutes. You're loading the last supplies when you hear horns in the distance. Roman reinforcements. Time to leave. You and the others scramble toward the forest, heavily loaded, moving much slower than you'd like. Gunther is limping badly, supported by 2 warriors. You realize with cold certainty that if Romans catch you, you'll drop everything and run. Survival trumps profit. It always does. The retreat is less heroic than the songs will make it sound. You're running through forest carrying 40 pounds of stolen supplies, while Roman cavalry, actual trained soldiers on actual horses, close the distance behind you. Your lungs burn, your legs scream. The iron hammer you thought was such a great prize now feels like carrying a boulder. You consider dropping it approximately 18 times, but stubbornness wins out. You're not abandoning perfectly good iron just because Romans want to kill you. You reach the Rhine and don't even pause, splashing straight into the freezing water. The shock of cold on top of exhaustion almost stops your heart. You wade, then swim, then wade again, spear and stolen goods held overhead in some miracle of determination and stupidity. Behind you, Roman cavalry reaches the shoreline. They have bows. Arrows start hitting the water around you. Most miss. One doesn't. It catches Sunno, the young warrior who'd already lost his spear, right in the back. He doesn't scream, just stops moving and sinks. You don't stop. You can't stop. You swim over approximately where he went down and keep going. The arrows stop once you're too far out. Romans rarely pursue Franks across the Rhine. The border means something to them that it doesn't mean to you. You reach your side, drag yourself onto the bank, and lie there gasping like a landed fish. Fish. Around you, other warriors emerge from the water. You count heads. 27. You left with 31. 4 dead, including Sunno. Plus Gunther will likely die from his leg wound. So really 5 casualties for some grain, meat, and metal. You're not sure if this counts as a victory or a disaster. Probably both. You stagger back to your village, carrying your stolen goods, and adopt a bone-deep exhaustion that makes everything feel like moving through mud. The raid is over. The supplies will feed your family for maybe a month. Gunther dies 3 days later when his leg wound goes septic, which everyone predicted and nobody could prevent. Sunno's body never recovers from the Rhine. His mother wails for 2 days straight, then simply stops talking. You attend neither funeral ritual because you're too busy trying to survive the next immediate crisis. Your wife, Brunhild, goes into early labor. She's only 7 months pregnant, which in the 4th century might as well be a death sentence for the baby, and often the mother too. You sit outside your longhouse, listening to her scream, completely helpless. Other women attend to her. Your tribe has midwives skilled in practical things like checking the baby's position and applying herbal compresses, but fundamentally lacking in actual medical knowledge that could change outcomes. After 6 hours, she delivers a son. He's tiny, barely the size of your forearm, and he's not breathing. One of the midwives performs the closest thing your era has to infant CPR. She blows breath into his mouth, rubs his chest, and prays to gods whose names will be forgotten in a few generations. Against all probability, the baby gasps, whimpers, and begins breathing on his own. You name him Merovech, which means sea famous, even though you've never seen the sea, and likely never will. Names matter. They're the only immortality most people get. Your son survives his first week, then his first month. This is miraculous enough that other villagers treat him like he's blessed by the gods, cursed by demons, or just remarkably stubborn. Opinions vary. You don't care about interpretations. You care that he's breathing. Brunhild recovers slowly, spending most days in the longhouse, while her body heals from the traumatic birth. You take over more household duties, which means you're now a warrior, a father, a hunter, a builder, and a gatherer simultaneously. The 4th century has no concept of work-life balance. You just work until you collapse, sleep briefly, and work again. The autumn harvest is poor. Again, 3 years in a row now, which even by 4th century standards qualifies as a significant problem. The tribal council debates why the gods are angry. Theories range from we didn't sacrifice enough animals to Rome's weakness is contaminating the natural order to maybe it's just bad weather and has nothing to do with divine displeasure. That last opinion gets shouted down immediately. Pragmatism is unpopular when people are hungry and scared. Theudemir announces a major decision. Your tribe will move, not far, maybe 50 miles south, to better land near what Romans call Toxandria. It's technically Roman territory, which means technically you're invading the empire. Practically, Rome hasn't actually controlled this area in decades. The land is empty, fertile, and available to whoever has enough weapons to hold it. You'll become farmers who occasionally fight rather than fighters who occasionally farm. This shift in priority seems minor. It's not. You're witnessing the beginning of Frankish settlement, though nobody has the historical perspective to recognize it. The migration begins on a cold morning in late autumn, which is possibly the worst time to move 40 families 50 miles through wilderness, but harvest timing doesn't allow for better scheduling. You join a column of loaded carts, livestock, children, elderly, and warriors maintaining loose perimeter defense. Your entire world fits in one cart, pulled by an ox that's as tired of life as everyone else. Baby Merovingian, now 2 months old and slightly less likely to die randomly, is strapped to Brunhild's chest. You walk beside the cart, spear ready, scanning tree lines for threats that may or may not exist. The journey should take 5 days. It takes 8. The ox goes lame on day 3, forcing you to unload half your possessions and carry the rest while the injured animal limps along unburdened. On day 5, you cross paths with another Frankish tribe, also migrating south. There's a tense hour where both groups size each other up, deciding whether to fight over the same destination. Cooler heads prevail. You'll settle in adjacent territories and probably hate each other for generations, but you won't fight today. Small victories. You reach Toxandria and find it exactly as promised, empty, fertile, and completely devoid of Roman authority. There are ruins of an old Roman villa, its walls crumbling, but its foundation solid. Your tribe settles around it, establishing a new village that blends Germanic building techniques with scavenged Roman materials. You spend 2 weeks constructing a new longhouse. This one's slightly larger because you've decided to be optimistic about your family's survival prospects. The roof leaks, the walls have gaps. It's still better than the old place. Progress is relative. You plant crops for the first time in your life. With any real hope they'll succeed. The land here is better than your old territory. Richer soil, more predictable water, fewer rocks that seem to breed overnight. You're learning to be a farmer rather than a raider, which requires an entirely different skill set. Raiding rewards quick violence and faster retreat. Farming rewards patience, observation, and accepting that nature doesn't care about your plans. You're terrible at it initially. Your first furrows are crooked. Your seed distribution is uneven. An older farmer named Baldric watches you work for an hour before finally suggesting, with impressive diplomatic tact, that perhaps you should watch him plant the next row. Baldric is 60, which makes him basically Methuselah. He's survived by being smart, instead of strong, by reading weather patterns and soil conditions, rather than by killing people. He teaches you things your warrior training completely neglected. How deep to plant different seeds, how to recognize pests before they destroy everything, why you should always save your best crops for next year's seed. It's remarkably cool. You gain new respect for farmers, whom you'd previously considered boring people who never did anything interesting. Turns out keeping yourself fed requires more skill than stabbing someone with a spear. Your son Merovingian begins walking, which mostly means falling down repeatedly while looking surprised each time. He's developing personality, stubborn, curious, apparently fearless in ways that terrify Brunhild. He tries to pet the ox. He attempts to grab burning logs from the fire. He finds the one puddle guaranteed to be deepest and heads straight for it. Parenting is revealed to be a constant state of preventing a small person from accidentally killing themselves. You love him completely while simultaneously wondering how any child survives to adulthood. Summer brings the first successful harvest since you moved to Toxandria, and the relief is almost physical. The barley grows tall, the wheat doesn't fail. Even your vegetables, which you planted with no real expertise, produce edible food. During harvest, the entire village works together in a way that hadn't happened since before the succession crisis. Children gather loose grain. Women bundle stalks. Men cut with iron sickles that are precious beyond measure and constantly need sharpening. You work from dawn to dusk, developing calluses on top of calluses, and you've never been happier to be exhausted. A traveling merchant arrives midway through harvest, the first outside visitor to your settlement. He's Roman, or claims Roman citizenship anyway. Hard to tell what that means anymore, when the empire is fragmenting in real time. He brings goods, better iron tools, salt precious as silver for preserving food, colored wool, dye, and news. The news is almost more valuable than the goods. He reports that Rome has effectively abandoned the Rhine frontier. The legions are being pulled back to defend Italy itself. The Western Empire is collapsing slowly, like a building where people keep removing load-bearing walls to use as firewood. For Franks, this is opportunity disguised as tragedy. With Rome withdrawing, hundreds of miles of former imperial territory are essentially unclaimed. Young Clodio calls a council and proposes something radical: expansion, not random raiding, but organized territorial control. The Franks will move from being a loose collection of tribes to becoming a confederation with actual land claims. You'll need alliances with other Frankish groups, trade networks, defensive structures, and something approaching government. It sounds exhausting. It also sounds like your children might inherit something more stable than you did. Autumn brings diplomatic, which is a pretentious way of saying you walk for days to meet with other Frankish tribes and convince them not to kill you on sight. Young Clodio sends you as part of a delegation because you're experienced enough to be credible, but not senior enough to be a major loss. If negotiations fail violently, this is either trust or expendability. Probably both. You travel with 5 others to meet the Salian Franks, a larger confederation to the north who view your Toxandrian settlement with suspicion. The negotiations are tense, conducted in a mixture of Germanic dialects that are close enough to understand, but different enough to create misunderstandings. The Salian chief, Merovingian, is younger than you expected and far more Roman-influenced. He wears a toga over his traditional clothing and refers to Roman law codes like they're still relevant. His warriors carry Roman swords alongside traditional spears. You realize you're seeing the future Franks who are learning to blend Germanic tradition with Roman sophistication. It's either adaptive or corrupted, depending on your perspective, teaching young Merovingian basic skills like knife handling and fire starting. He's 2 years old, which by 4th century standards means old enough to start learning practical survival. Your teaching methods would horrify future generations. You hand him a sharp knife and show him how to whittle, accepting that he'll probably cut himself learning. He does. He cries briefly, then tries again. You feel proud and guilty simultaneously. News arrives via travelers. Rome has a new emperor, then another new emperor, then a third emperor. The Western Empire is collapsing faster than anyone predicted, with generals proclaiming themselves emperor every few months before being murdered by other generals doing the same thing. For Franks in Toxandria, this is mostly amusing gossip. Roman instability is Frankish opportunity. More refugees cross the Rhine daily. Former Roman citizens, auxiliary soldiers, merchants with nowhere to trade, all seeking stability with barbarians because barbarians currently offer more security than civilization does. Young Clodio makes a controversial decision. He'll accept refugees regardless of origin. Romans, Gauls, even a few Goths wandering far from their own territories. The only requirement is swearing loyalty to the tribe and contributing labor. Some warriors object strenuously. These are Romans, traditional enemies, but Clodio argues that people are resources, and resources build strength. You watch your village transform ethnically over a single winter. Your son will grow up in a mixed community that is purely Frankish. You're not sure how you feel about this. And so you default to not feeling anything strongly and just working alongside whoever shows up. Spring brings Saxon raiders, which is both predictable and inconvenient. The Saxons are Germanic tribes like the Franks, but from further north and considerably more committed to the traditional lifestyle of raiding anything that isn't nailed down. They arrive by boat up the river. 30 warriors looking for easy targets. Your settlement is not an easy target anymore. Young Clodio has spent the winter organizing defenses, a proper palisade wall, guard rotations, and most importantly, the alliance with the Salian Franks means reinforcements. You're on watch when the Saxons arrive, which means you see them first and immediately know this is going to be problematic. They're not approaching carefully, they're approaching confidently, which suggests they don't know your settlement has grown. You sound the alarm, a horn blast that brings warriors running from fields and homes. By the time the Saxons beach their boats, 40 Frankish warriors are waiting behind the palisade with spears ready. The Saxons pause, reassess, and someone on their side makes the terrible decision to attack anyway. The battle is brief and extremely one-sided. The palisade gives your defenders massive advantage. Saxon warriors try to climb or break through and get speared for their efforts. After losing 8 men in maybe 10 minutes, the Saxons retreat to their boats and leave. You've had exactly one casualty, a young warrior who leaned too far over the wall and fell off, breaking his arm. It's simultaneously a glorious victory and a mildly embarrassing anticlimax. Young Claudio declares a feast anyway, because victories need celebrating regardless of how they're achieved. Probabilities. Your body reminds you of this daily through various aches, pains, and the way your knees make disconcerting sounds when you stand up. Young Merovingian, now 3, follows you everywhere, absorbing knowledge about being a Frankish warrior farmer through observation and constant questions. His favorite question is, why? Applied to literally everything. Why do we plant seeds? Why do Saxons raid? Why is the sky blue? You answer what you can and improvise the rest, accidentally becoming a philosopher while just trying to farm. The settlement continues growing. More refugees arrive, some Roman, some from other Germanic tribes displaced by shifting power dynamics. Young Clodio implements something revolutionary, a council that includes non-Franks. Roman refugees with administrative experience help organize tax collection, property boundaries, and trade agreements. It's the kind of bureaucratic infrastructure that traditionally makes warriors want to stab something, but even you admit it works better than the old system of whoever is strongest takes what they want. Civilization is creeping in through pragmatic necessity. A messenger arrives from the Salian Franks with interesting news. Their chief, Merovingian, proposes a formal confederation. Multiple Frankish tribes uniting under loose cooperative leadership, maintaining individual authority, but coordinating on major decisions. It's like a proto-nation state, though nobody uses that terminology because the concept won't be invented for another 1,000 years. Young Clodio is excited. You're cautiously optimistic. The old warriors who remember pure tribal independence are suspicious, but too practical to oppose obvious advantages. The vote is nearly unanimous to join. The Frankish Confederation formalizes over the next year through a series of meetings that test your patience for politics. You attend as a minor representative, mostly because young Clodio trusts you to not say something diplomatically disastrous. The Confederation isn't a kingdom. Nobody's ready for that level of centralized authority. But it establishes common defense, trade routes, and dispute resolution that doesn't default to immediate violence. It's measured in less stabbing. During one particularly long meeting, you meet Childeric, a young warrior from a Salian clan who reminds you uncomfortably of yourself. 20 years ago. Ambitious, skilled, and just smart enough to be dangerous. He's Merageis's nephew, being groomed for future leadership. You talk about weapons, farming, and the weird situation of being Germanic warriors who are slowly becoming less warrior and more governor. He complains that his elders don't understand the changing world. But you realize with horror that you're now one of the elders. When did that happen? Back home, life settles into something almost mundane. You farm. You train younger warriors. You watch Merovich grow, teaching him the skills that kept you alive. Tracking, basic combat negotiation, when to fight, and more importantly, when to run. Brunhild is pregnant again, which terrifies both of you given the last experience. The pregnancy proceeds nervously, but normally. After 8 months of worry, she delivers a healthy daughter you name Ottofleda. Unlike Merovich, Ottofleda is born without drama, arriving almost boringly on time. You're grateful for boring. Boring means surviving. Years pass with surprising speed when measured in harvests rather than battles. You're 35, which makes you genuinely ancient by warrior standards. Most men your age are dead, disabled, or telling exaggerated stories, while younger men do actual work. You try to avoid becoming that person, with mixed success. Merovich is 6, old enough to help with real labor. You teach him to use a proper spear, not just a practice weapon. He's good at it, which fills you with pride and dread simultaneously. Ottofleda is 3, stubborn as a rock and twice as hard to move when she's decided something. She's already negotiating with adults and usually winning. The Confederation has transformed life dramatically. Frankish territory now stretches over territory that once was purely Roman. Young Claudio, not so young anymore, pushing 40 himself, has become a significant regional leader. Your settlement serves as a trading hub, with Roman, Frankish, and Gothic merchants meeting to exchange goods. You personally meet a merchant from Britannia who tells horrifying stories about Saxon invasions there. The Saxons, who occasionally raid you, are apparently conquering entire provinces elsewhere. You feel simultaneously lucky and worried about what comes next. Brunhild gets sick. It starts as a cough, worsens to fever, and progresses to something your era has no name for, but future centuries will call pneumonia. The midwives try everything: herbal compresses, steam treatments, prayers to various gods. Nothing works. She dies over 3 days, slowly fading while you sit helpless beside her. You've killed men in combat, survived raids, built a life from nothing, and you're completely powerless to save your wife from invisible enemies living in her lungs. Merovich and Ottofleda watched their mother die without understanding it. You understand it and wish you didn't. Grief in the 4th century is different from future versions. You're allowed maybe 2 days of visible mourning before practical survival demands attention. Crops need tending. Children need feeding. Life continues, whether you're emotionally ready or not. You rise each morning, perform necessary tasks mechanically, and collapse each night without really sleeping. Merovich tries to help by doing chores without being asked, which somehow makes everything worse. Ottofleda asks when mother is coming back approximately 40 times per day. Each time breaks something inside you, and each time you explain again that she's not. The community helps, which is both necessary and overwhelming. Women bring food. Men offer to assist with farm work. Even young Claudio stops by to offer condolences and probably check that you're not completely falling apart. You appreciate the gesture while wanting everyone to leave you alone. Contradictory feelings are normal when processing death. Not that anyone in your era understands internal emotional architecture. You just feel terrible and keep working slowly, incrementally. Life reassembles itself into new patterns. You cook for yourself, and the children with mediocre results. Merovingian learns to help, preparing simple meals with competence that suggests he's been watching adults longer than you realized. Otto Fleda assigns herself the job of collecting firewood, bringing back handfuls of twigs with serious dedication. Your family unit adapts, shifts, continues. After 3 months, you realize you went an entire day without crying. Progress is measured in increasingly smaller survivals. A year after Brunhild's death, you remarry. This isn't romance, it's necessity. You're 36 with 2 children in an era where single-parent households simply don't function well. Your new wife, Basina, is a widow with 1 child of her own from a neighboring settlement. The arrangement is negotiated by clan elders like a business transaction, because that's essentially what it is. You meet twice before the ceremony, discuss practical matters like child rearing and property, and agree that you're both too tired for drama. It's not the passionate beginning of your first marriage. It's something more pragmatic and, in its own way, more honest. Basina is competent, quiet, and unsentimental about the situation. She doesn't try to replace Brunhild, which you appreciate. She runs the household efficiently, treats Merovingian and Otto Fleda firmly but fairly, and expects you to do the same with her son, Rignamer. Your blended family is awkward initially. Children negotiating pecking orders, adults learning each other's habits. But it functions. After a few months, it even feels normal. Not happy, exactly, but stable. In the 5th century, stable counts as victory. Young Clodio dies that winter, not from violence, but from simple illness. He's 43, which seemed eternal until it suddenly wasn't. The succession is complicated because the confederation concept is still new, and nobody's entirely sure how leadership transitions work. After 3 weeks of political maneuvering that occasionally threatens to become actual violence, a compromise emerges. Childeric, the ambitious young warrior you met years ago, becomes the new confederation leader. He's 28, experienced beyond his years, and crucially acceptable to multiple factions. You attend his inauguration thinking about how strange history is. You've lived long enough to see leadership transfer across generations. Under Childeric's leadership, the Frankish Confederation expands aggressively. Not through the old-style raiding that's economically inefficient and politically problematic when you're not trying to build a stable territory, but through calculated military campaigns coordinated across multiple tribes. You're too old for the fighting itself, but you help train younger warriors and occasionally serve as scout, because you know the territory better than men half your age. Experience compensates for physical decline. Mostly, the campaigns target remaining Roman holdings and rival Germanic tribes. Childeric is ruthlessly practical. He'll negotiate when it's cheaper than fighting, fight when he can win, and retreat when he can't. This flexibility horrifies traditionalists who believe honor requires standing and dying stupidly. Childeric prefers winning and living. You approve. After 40 years of watching men die for no strategic benefit. Pragmatism is refreshing. Frankish territory expands to include most of what was northern Gaul. It's not France yet. That name comes later, derived from Franks, but nobody's thought of it yet. It's a patchwork of controlled settlements, tributary tribes, and negotiated boundaries that exist mostly in people's heads. But it's territory under coordinated leadership, which is more organization than existed 10 years ago. Merovingian, now 12, serves as a messenger during campaigns. He's fast, smart, and doesn't panic easily. You worry constantly but say nothing. This is what you trained him for. The Roman Empire officially collapses in the West. Not dramatically. Empires rarely die with flourish, but bureaucratically. The lost emperor, Romulus Augustulus, is deposed by a Germanic general named Odoacer, who doesn't bother claiming the title himself. He just rules Italy as king and sends the imperial regalia to Constantinople. For Franks, this is mostly a formality. Rome hasn't controlled Gaul meaningfully in decades, but the symbolic end still matters. You're living through the technical end of the ancient world and the technical beginning of something new. History books will call it the Middle Ages. You call it Tuesday. What matters more locally is that Roman infrastructure is decaying faster, without even pretended imperial maintenance. Roads crumble. Aqueducts break. The postal system that connected provinces dies completely. For Franks, this is actually fine. You never relied on Roman infrastructure anyway, but it creates interesting situations where Frankish-controlled territories have better functioning government than former Roman cities nearby. Civilization hasn't ended, it's just changed management. You're 40, which is impossibly old. Your body reminds you constantly, joints that ache before rain, scars that throb in cold weather, eyesight that's not quite sharp anymore. You can't fight effectively, can't farm full days, can't keep up with younger men who treat you with respect that feels suspiciously like pity. Basina manages most household work while you contribute what you can. Merovingian is 15 now, essentially an adult, fighting in Childeric's campaigns. Ordefleda is 12, already being discussed for marriage arrangements. Rignamer is building his own life. If you're transitioning from participant to observer, watching the world continue without really needing you. Childeric dies suddenly at 35, reportedly from battle wounds that became infected, though rumors suggest poison by rivals. His death creates another succession crisis because the Frankish Confederation is barely old enough to have established traditions. His son, Clovis, is only 15, same age as your Merovingian, but shows remarkable political instinct. He secures leadership through a combination of his father's remaining loyalists, strategic marriages, and timely elimination of rivals. You watch a teenager maneuver through politics that would challenge experienced leaders and feel both impressed and disturbed. This is either genius or sociopathy, possibly both. Clovis immediately begins consolidating power more aggressively than his father did. He's not interested in loose confederation. He wants a kingdom. Under Clovis, Franks will stop being a tribal alliance and become something closer to a nation-state. This requires crushing internal opposition, which he does efficiently and brutally. Several tribal chiefs who resisted centralization simply disappear. Their families swear loyalty to Clovis afterward, which tells you everything about medieval persuasion techniques. You attend a council where Clovis speaks and it's unsettling. He's half your age but commands the room effortlessly, blending charm and barely concealed threats. He talks about unifying all Franks under single rule, expanding territory to natural boundaries, establishing hereditary kingship. These are Roman concepts applied to Germanic peoples. You realize you're watching your culture transform in real time. Whether it's progress or corruption depends on perspective. Probably both. Clovis marries Clotilde, a Burgundian princess who's notably Catholic, while Franks remain largely pagan or Arian Christian. This is strategic. Catholic Christianity is the religion of former Roman populations. Clovis wants to rule. By marrying a Catholic princess, he signals openness to the majority faith while maintaining flexibility. Political marriage has been elevated to art form under Clovis. You attend the wedding, which blends Frankish tradition with Catholic ritual in ways that would horrify purists from either tradition. Nobody cares. Practical synthesis beats ideological purity. The religious situation is becoming complicated. Most Franks worship traditional Germanic gods, Wotan, Donar, Freya, with occasional Catholic or Arian influences, depending on region. Clotilde is trying to convert Clovis, who's remained diplomatically non-committal. You personally don't care much about gods anymore. You've prayed to several different deities over your life, and none prevented Brunhild from dying or your body from aging. So, you've developed practical agnosticism. You'll participate in whatever rituals are socially required without strong theological opinions. Merovech, now 17, is part of Clovis's permanent military force. This is new, full-time warriors, rather than farmer warriors who fight seasonally. It's more Roman than Germanic, but it's also more effective. Professional soldiers win more reliably than armed farmers. Merovech writes occasional letters, another Roman innovation that's spreading, describing campaigns against Alemanni tribes to the east. His descriptions are matter-of-fact about violence in ways that make you simultaneously proud and sad. You've raised a competent warrior. You're not sure that's actually an achievement. Clovis fights the Battle of Tolbiac against the Alemanni, a Germanic tribe threatening Frankish eastern borders. The battle goes poorly initially. Frankish forces are being pushed back, casualties mounting. According to later accounts, Clovis prays to Clotilde's Christian god, promising conversion if granted victory. Whether this happened or was invented afterward for political purposes, nobody knows. What's certain is that Frankish forces rally, the Alemanni break, and Clovis wins decisively. He converts to Catholic Christianity immediately afterward. The conversion is politically brilliant. By becoming Catholic rather than Arian Christian, Clovis aligns with Rome's religious authority and the majority Roman population in his territories. Other Germanic kingdoms are Arian, which Rome considers heresy. Clovis is now the only Orthodox Christian Germanic king, giving him massive political advantage. 3,000 Frankish warriors convert with him in a mass baptism that's less about theology and more about showing loyalty. Merovech is among them. He writes describing the ceremony as strange but required. You appreciate his honesty. You don't convert. You're 46, too old to adopt new gods, just because kings find them politically convenient. Nobody forces you. The conversion isn't mandatory for common people yet, just expected for warriors and nobility. As an old man no longer in service, you're essentially invisible to religious authorities. You attend Frankish pagan ceremonies when they happen, Catholic masses when those are convenient, and maintain private agnosticism about all of it. The gods, whoever they are, have never shown particular interest in helping you. You return the favor. Clovis consolidates his kingdom through a combination of military conquest, strategic marriages, and carefully timed assassinations of rival Frankish chiefs. The tribal confederation is dead. Long live the kingdom. He establishes capital at Paris, a strategic location that controls river trade and sits at the intersection of former Roman roads. You've never visited Paris. You're too old for travel now. But Merovech describes it in letters as a strange hybrid of Roman ruins and Germanic construction, with a growing Catholic presence that dominates architecture. Your son has become someone you barely recognize. He's 22, a professional warrior and minor noble in Clovis's service. He's killed men, ruled over a small territory, married a woman from another Frankish clan you've never met. He writes dutifully, but visits rarely. When he does visit, there's awkwardness. You're proud of his success while being slightly intimidated by the person he's become. He treats you with respect, but also subtle impatience with your old stories and traditional ways. The generational gap feels like a canyon. Audifleda married 3 years ago and lives 2 settlements away. She visits occasionally with her husband and 2 young children, your grandchildren, which makes you feel impossibly ancient. You play with them briefly before tiring, watching them run around with energy you vaguely remember having. Basina manages while you sit in the sun and think about how strange it is to live long enough to see the world transform completely. The Franks who raised you would barely recognize the kingdom Clovis has built. You're not sure they'd approve. You're not sure you do either, But here it is. Clovis defeats the Visigoths at the Battle of Vouillé, expanding Frankish territory deep into southern Gaul. This victory is significant because it establishes Franks as the dominant Germanic power in the former Roman West. The Visigoths retreat into Spain. The Burgundians become tributary. The Alemanni are subdued. Clovis rules from the Channel to the Pyrenees, from the Rhine to the Atlantic. It's not France yet. That name comes from Francia, meaning land of the Franks, but the territory and people are assembling into what will become the medieval French kingdom. You're 50 years old, 50. That number seems impossible. You've outlived everyone from your childhood. Old warriors, farmers, even most women who survive childbirth are dead by 50. You exist in borrowed time. Each day a statistical improbability. Your body reminds you constantly, pain in joints that never quite fades, vision that's blurred at distance, hearing that misses conversations, digestion that rejects foods you once ate easily. You sleep poorly, wake frequently, move slowly. Basina cares for you more than you care for yourself, bringing food you don't want, helping you walk to places you're not sure why you're going, but your mind remains relatively sharp, which is both blessing and curse. You're aware of your decline, conscious of irrelevance, observing the world continue past you. Young people in the settlement treat you like ancient history, asking occasionally about the old days before quickly losing interest in your rambling answers. You're a living artifact, interesting in concept but boring in practice. Merovingian writes less frequently. Audifletta visits rarely. You understand. Their lives are full and yours is emptying. This is how it works. Clovis becomes the first king of all Franks, uniting various Frankish tribes under single rule. The Catholic Church enthusiastically supports him as the only Orthodox Christian Germanic king, providing religious legitimacy that translates to political power. Clovis codifies laws, the Salic law, that blend Germanic tribal custom with Roman legal concepts. He's building infrastructure, not roads and aqueducts like Romans, but administrative systems, tax collection, church relationships. This is governance, not just leadership. This is a kingdom that might actually persist beyond one strong man's lifetime. You understand dimly that you're witnessing the foundation of something significant, though you lack the historical perspective to recognize it as the beginning of France. To you, it's just Franks organizing better than before. You remember when Franks were loose tribes raiding Romans? Now Franks are the Romans, or at least their successors. The irony would be amusing if you had energy for amusement. Mostly, you just observe distantly, like watching weather change. Your daily existence has narrowed to small comforts. Sun on your face, familiar voices, memories that feel more real than present. You spend hours thinking about Brunhild, though her face is harder to recall now. You think about battles you survived, people you killed, the strange path from Rhine Riverside to kingdom building. Did you contribute to this? Marginally, perhaps? You were one warrior among thousands, one farmer among many, one father among countless. Your significance is approximately zero in the grand narrative, but you were here. You survived when most didn't. That counts for something, even if only to you. Clovis dies in Ubat Ishur EAD at approximately 45 years old, young by modern standards, but a full life by 5th century measures. His kingdom is divided among his 4 sons, according to Frankish custom, which will create centuries of fraternal conflict, but that's a future problem. For now, the Merovingian dynasty, named after Merovech, Childeric's father, though history gets confused about exact lineages, is established. The Franks have transformed from tribal raiders to a kingdom that will eventually become France. The transformation took approximately 150 years and countless lives, most forgotten, some barely remembered. You hear about Clovis's death with dim recognition. He was 20 years younger than you, vibrant and powerful, and now he's dead while you somehow continue breathing. Life's timing is arbitrary. Merovingian sends word he'll visit, which surprises you until you realize he probably expects you're not dying soon and wants to see you one last time. He's not wrong. You can feel your body shutting down systematically, organs failing, systems slowing, the machine of you grinding to halt after 52 years of operation, without maintenance. You're not afraid. Fear requires energy you don't have. You're just tired. So incredibly tired. The thought of rest, actual rest, not the fitful sleep of old age, sounds wonderful. Waking less clearly until finally you just don't wake up. It happens on an ordinary autumn morning. Basina notices your breathing has stopped, checks, and confirms what she's been expecting. No drama, no final words. You were there, then you weren't. This is how most people die. Quietly, unremarkably, surrounded by ordinary morning routines. The funeral follows Frankish tradition blended with Catholic elements, reflecting how thoroughly Christianity has infiltrated even traditional ceremonies. Your body is buried in the settlement cemetery, marked with a simple wooden cross that will rot away within 10 years. No elaborate grave goods. Christianity discourages that now, just your body in the earth. Merovingian attends, brings family, speaks briefly about your life. He mentions your service to the tribe, your survival of numerous conflicts, your raising a family. It's accurate but feels generic, describing anyone from that generation who survived. Your specificity has been lost to necessity of brevity. The settlement continues. Immediately, your longhouse is repurposed for a younger family, your tools are redistributed. Within a month, daily life has absorbed your absence completely. Only Basina, Merovingian, and Autofleta remember you specifically, and even their memories will simplify over time into pleasant generalities. You'll become grandfather who lived a long time, and then that old warrior, and finally, just forgotten. This isn't tragic, it's normal. Most people leave no trace beyond genetics. You fathered children who've fathered children. Your DNA propagates forward while your personality dissolves into past. That's the transaction. A generation passes. Merovingian lives to 43, dying of fever during a minor military campaign. He's remembered briefly as a competent noble who served the kingdom well, then forgotten, except by his own children. Autofleta lives to 51, remarkable for a woman in this era, dying peacefully, surrounded by numerous grandchildren. Her children remember her stories about grandfather who lived impossibly long, though details blur. Basina dies within 3 years of you, which happens often with long-married couples. She's buried near you, her grave equally simple, equally temporary. The Merovingian dynasty continues through Clovis's sons and their descendants, though with increasing dysfunction. Frankish custom of dividing kingdoms among heirs creates endless fraternal wars. The dynasty will technically last 3 centuries, but effectively loses power much sooner. But that's future history. For now, in the early Wubaks, the transformation is complete. Franks have gone from Germanic tribal raiders to rulers of former Roman Gaul. The land you settled in Toxandria develops into Frankish heartland. The settlement grows into a town, then a small city. The Roman ruins you built around are demolished for materials, replaced entirely by Frankish and later medieval construction. Your longhouse's location is built over dozens of times. By the year 10 AD, 500 years after your death, no physical trace of your existence remains. Your grave's wooden cross rotted away centuries ago. Your name is forgotten. Your DNA persists in thousands of descendants who don't know you existed. This is the deal everyone makes with time. By the year Baba AD, nearly 3 centuries after your death, Charlemagne rules the Frankish Empire as the most powerful king in Western Europe. He's crowned Holy Roman Emperor, uniting much of Western and Central Europe under Frankish rule. The kingdom you watched emerge in infancy has become an empire. The Germanic tribe that crossed the Rhine as raiders now rules from the Atlantic to Central Europe. This is the peak of Frankish power, though the empire will fragment again after Charlemagne's death. But here's what matters. The land is called Francia. The people are Franks. The language evolving from Latin mixed with Frankish Germanic will become French. The kingdom will eventually become France. The transformation from Germanic tribe to European nation is complete. It took 5 centuries, thousands of forgotten lives, countless battles, plagues, famines, and the slow grinding work of building civilization from tribal chaos. You witnessed the beginning. You were there at the Rhine crossing, the first settlements in Toxandria, the succession crises, the emergence of Clovis's kingdom. You were one warrior farmer among thousands who lived, worked, fought, and died during the transformation. Your contribution was infinitesimal. You killed some people, raised some children, farmed some land, survived improbably long, but infinitesimal contributions from thousands of forgotten people create history. The Franks went from Germanic tribe to founding France, not through heroes and great men, though they helped, but through countless ordinary people like you, warriors who became farmers, raiders who became settlers, pagans who became Christians, tribes that became kingdoms. You were generic, forgettable, statistically irrelevant. You were also essential. Everyone is. Tonight, you've walked through one forgotten life during the birth of France. Clodio wasn't a hero. He wasn't important. History doesn't remember his name outside this story, but he was there. He crossed the Rhine, survived battles, raised children, witnessed the transformation of his people from tribal raiders to kingdom builders. He lived 52 years in an era when most died by 30. He saw the Roman Empire collapse and the Merovingian dynasty rise. He was present at the beginning. His life was mostly mundane, farming, fighting occasionally, raising family, getting old. The dramatic moments were brief and often terrifying rather than glorious. Warfare was cold and hungry, and disease-ridden. Politics was confusing and dangerous. Survival required constant work and frequent luck. This was life for virtually everyone during the migration period and early Middle Ages. No glory, little comfort, much hardship, and death arriving randomly for most, and late for few. But these forgotten lives built. France emerged not from heroic myths, but from thousands of people like Clodio, making compromises, adapting to change, surviving what they could, dying when they couldn't, raising children who continued forward. The Franks became France through the accumulated weight of ordinary lives, lived during extraordinary transformation. That's how history actually works. Not through great men alone, but through countless forgotten people whose small contributions compound into civilization. So rest now. You followed one tribal warrior from the Rhine to his grave in Toxandria. You've witnessed the early Middle Ages from ground level. You've seen how the Franks went from Germanic tribe to founding France. It wasn't glorious. It was real. And now, with the story complete, you can close your eyes and drift off, knowing that even forgotten lives matter. Even yours, even his. Good night. And so we close the story of how the Franks went from Germanic tribe to founding France, witnessed through one forgotten warrior's ordinary life. No glory, just survival. No fame, just continuity. From Rhine raids to kingdom building. From tribal chaos to organized rule. The transformation happened through countless lives like Clodio's, unremarkable, essential, forgotten. Thank you for joining this journey into the ancient world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, please subscribe for more bedtime documentaries about the forgotten people who built civilization. Leave a comment about which historical period you'd like explored next. And now, sleep well. The past is settled. The present is comfortable. Good night.